This is Deborah Ivanoff, the Being Coach, and joining me this morning is Jackie Pasciak, Being the Solution 9-week workshop instructor. And we've been having conversations very early Tuesday mornings about various tools and topics from Being the Solution. Jackie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great, perfect. Well, good morning. And this morning we said we would tackle, well, really, the major reason most people come to Being the Solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, resistance. So years ago, Jackie, I didn't even know what resistance was. Did you? I mean, I didn't
Oh,
know what it
not
was
at all.
called.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I just knew that things wouldn't work out. And I think I've shared before that I just kept starting over and over again. So you want to maybe, just in case people are watching this later, you want to define resistance. What is your understanding of what resistance is? And I'll throw my 2 cents worth in.
Yeah, I think it's something that shows up in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's pretty obvious that um, you start to get out of the box and start your new goal, start progress toward it, and then some kind of sabotage comes in, and sometimes it seems like it's somebody else, sometimes it seems like it's something else. Um, Sometimes it just shows up as mild distractions or just sort of a forgetfulness. It's just anything that just sort of shows up when you're making progress towards your goals.
Yeah, yeah. Years ago, again, didn't even know what it was, didn't even understand it. And it was such a big aha to me. The word aha doesn't even begin to describe it. It was such a big awareness that I could be going for what I wanted and I could be experiencing getting it. And then all of a sudden, it just looked like everything was going against me instead of for me. And the idea that that was part of the actual process of getting there was amazing to me. I just never even imagined that that was the case. Why don't we learn this? I don't know why we don't learn this, but it's just made such a huge difference. So let's call out resistance. Let's call out some of the ways resistance shows up, just because I think it's kind of fun. Or let's call out all the ways we've we've experienced resistance. So I know this doesn't happen to me as often, but it used to always happen to me, was that I would get sick. I would feel run down and then I would get sick. And just when things would get rolling, I would have the flu or I would have some upper respiratory thing that would put me in bed for a week and I couldn't speak. I had no voice, tonsillitis or something. Did that ever happen to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't so much anymore, but it did.
Yeah. Yeah, it always used to me. And it was such a big thing to be able to say, oh, this is resistance. Some part of me does not want the change. It wants to go back in the box, so to speak. Let's see.
Hmm.
How has resistance shown up for you in the past, Jackie?
Well, a lot of times it's just you completely forget, and I look at even saying something like, "Oh, well, that just wasn't meant to be." You know,
Mm.
the fact is we can achieve whatever we want, but sometimes people say, "Well, maybe I'm just getting these messages from the universe that I shouldn't be doing this." And to me, that's just a mild like justification of it. It's a resistance. It's a justification. Your mind is saying, "Okay, I quit," you
Yeah.
know, and you can blame it
Okay.
on the universe.
So you bring up a really important point, because resistance can show up. Definitely can be guidance that we're headed down the wrong path, right? That can happen. But there can
Hmm.
also be resistance, and I think it takes practice and support, a lot of practice, to know the difference between what's resistance and what's actually bona fide guidance or feedback, that we're not in alignment, or we're not really headed in the direction we said we wanted. That's a really good point, Jackie. So sometimes when people feel that this isn't working, it may not be resistance. It actually may be it may be feedback. that we're headed down a detour that is not in our best interest. So that's a really, I hadn't thought to talk about this, but let's talk about that. Well, let's call out all the resistances first, and then let's come back, let's circle back to that, because I think that could be something valuable for people to think about. You know, what is resistance
Mhm.
and what is actually guidance? And they feel differently, and they feel differently to different people. So maybe we can come back to talk about that. But anyway, so you said, okay, so resistance. So what are some other resistances you felt? Things going wrong?
Um, it could be a physical pain. It could be the people around you
Oh,
are
that's a good one.
acting or not, maybe they're acting the same and you're just going, "Wait a minute. I can't believe you're not letting me do this right now." Um, and sometimes it's technology, it seems. Um,
Technology really can
or
play
just, general moodiness and frustration.
the. Yeah, that's a good one. Mood swings, problems with the technology. I know I've had in the past things breaking down, like machinery dying or breaking down or having trouble with it and needing repairs. That's definitely happened.
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes just a maybe a short-temperedness or I know I or procrastination. I know I need to do this and I know I really want this, but I'm not doing it right now.
Yeah, and there's definitely a heaviness to that, isn't there? A heaviness or a slowness or there's a feeling that gets associated with some of those. I know too, for me, in the past, what's shown up in resistance, because I value my relationship so much with people, and I know you do too, has been upsets, like like flaring up of some kind of strange upset with a person that I care about,
Mhm.
and that definitely can be resistance and stop me from, or in the past has really been able to stop me from doing what it is I want to do. And it took me a while to get some skills under my belt so that I could resolve those upsets more masterfully and get back to doing and being what it was that I wanted, for sure. Does that ever happen to you? Maybe not.
Sure. Absolutely. And, that seems to be when, maybe it's just when we are trying to go for something, we become more sensitive and we become,
Mhm.
more hypersensitive about when somebody that you care about said, "Oh, but that's not like you at all." And then you go, "Oh my gosh, you're right."
So hypersensitivity, that could be a resistance in a way too. I mean, it can be a plus, but it could also be a resistance in that if it stops us, right? I think that's what we're looking at, isn't it, Jackie? It's like resistance is that thing that slows down or stops us. I'm just thinking out loud here. Resistance is that thing that slows down or stops us, whereas something that would be feedback, bona fide guidance, that would be feedback from the universe that could help us, is something that will not send us back to who we were, but help guide us in the direction of who we want to be. I think that's a difference, but they may not feel that much different. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's many different disguises in this whole process, and as we practice it a little bit more, then we start to realize, okay, that's kind of resistance in disguise, or that's my path towards my goal in disguise. I think if it were just a one-shot deal and a one-shot formula, then we wouldn't need to keep visiting this all the time.
Right, right, right. No, it's definitely a muscle. It's definitely a muscle, and it's a even maybe a little bit of an artistry, I think, because once we change into someone new and we get what we want, right? Then the next time around, it's gonna look and feel different again because we're in different territory, right? I mean, that is
Mm.
part of it. Is every single time it's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what happens is our human mind, our adult human mind, tends to go to okay, you want to be thinner, just do this. And if you're not actually doing it and experiencing it, it can look really easy from the outside until you
Hmm.
actually start diving in. I tell my mother, "Oh yeah, I've been taking this workshop for some time," and she said, "What do you mean you need a workshop to get your goals? Just go for it." Well, it's so much easier to look on the outside and say, "Yep, point A, point B, end of story." But the real revelations are in the journey, and the real, okay, that's why we tend to stay the same weight, or
Hmm.
look the same way, or earn the same amount of income. It's because of all of those different, because actually changing it is, it's not necessarily difficult. I mean, sometimes there's a pathway to change that can be really, like the superhighway. Wow, that happened really fast. And then other times it's something that you've been trying to do for a long time, and you don't get anywhere. And that's where I think what the workshop is for, the workshop environment. Those kind of the transformations where, you suddenly lose a relationship, or sometimes it's like, all of a sudden I was distracted, and um, I finally started earning the income I wanted, or I finally started losing the weight that I wanted. What we try to do is try to sort of dissect that process and say, what are some of the things, what are some of the elements that can help really, what are some of those transformational elements that we can, sort of manufacture, rather than just wait for some crisis to push us into something.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the workshop, and I'm thinking about how many times I took the workshop and how many times I taught the workshop. You too, Jackie. And I think that that is what made the whole difference for me, was knowing that I committed to being on that call every single week, and meeting with those other people and hearing that I wasn't alone. Oh my goodness, that made such a difference, because for so many years I was just trying and trying alone, and I would look at everybody else and think, it works for them. Why doesn't anything work for me? That's how I used to feel long ago. And I didn't really understand that it may look that way, but everybody's going through that, what you said, the transformation process. It feels and looks a little differently. And I think you mentioned sometimes people even losing a relationship. Well, yeah, I think that's what keeps us in our place, is that fear of what we would have to give up if we become someone new. But that is the reality. Like, it's really easy from someone on the outside to go, well, just do it. But that's like saying, yeah, just go ahead, play complete havoc with your life. You don't know what's going to change. Sure, you'll get your goal, but anything could happen. And to have that support, because it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like everything drops out and you lose everything. It doesn't have to be like that. In fact, that would definitely be some resistance, wouldn't it? Like, bad stuff
Hmm.
will happen if you change. And I think that's a voice of resistance right there. Bad stuff will happen if you change. And it's not true. Although sometimes people do, in the course of changing. I certainly have. Haven't you let go of things in the course of changing? I know you have.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and it wasn't always easy, and it wasn't for me either, but letting go or processing through some situations or some relationships, or that were not in alignment with who we wanted to be, was required. It just was required to become that different person. It's not just do it. It's more dimensional than that, I think. And not understanding that process then leads to a lot of fear about what's going on. That's what I find anyway. What do you think?
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. And I think everybody's different, and everybody is different with different areas. Some areas do require a little more persistence, and other times there seems to be like this window that boom, you can just sail right through. That's just, I think, one of the mysteries, and that's what's kind of fun.
That is indeed one of the mysteries. That's the weather, right? Yeah, yeah. Well, so I think we've talked a little bit about resistance and all the different ways it can show up. And we've also talked a little bit about how resistance and guidance can be a different thing. And we've also talked a little bit about the workshop environment and how that can help really support us in that. And I just want to talk just a tiny bit more about that, because I think that
Still
that's going to,
there?
yeah, I'm still here, Jackie. Did you drop out? Did we lose you?
I'm sorry, I didn't
That's
get
okay.
that.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. So what I was saying is I just want to talk a little bit more about the power of support and the power of having people in our lives that see the change differently. So for instance, in the olden days, long ago, I mean, I can remember meeting with Daryl and just feeling like my world was turned upside down, which it was because I had some pretty big goals back then. And to be in the presence of someone pretty steady state who wasn't going to panic when I was panicking, panicking was one of my old forms of resistance. So to be in the state of someone who wasn't panicking at all, but knew it was part of the process, wasn't telling me that necessarily, but just really being there with me really made a huge difference. It was amazing to be with someone who didn't act like something was wrong, but just hung in there with me as I went through the changes. What has your experience been of getting support during the change process, during the resistance process specifically?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of it when you have that support in the form of in the form of talking with other people who have taken the workshop, and they realize, or they're, I guess, holding the space of your goal, so they know that, okay, that's what you want to do. And then you start realizing, okay, if they're experiencing resistance towards their goal, then it just becomes more normalized. So then you start going, okay, this is just part of the process. This is just a and then sometimes what'll happen is it's a new form of resistance that you didn't experience before. And I remember the first time, I think maybe the first time I took the workshop, this one woman said, every time I try to make the calls, my phone just would stop working. And and she goes, how can phones not working be resistance? And the other guy said, you'd be surprised. And I just went, wow, really? You got to be kidding me. Um, but then when now I remember his tone saying, you'd be surprised, and this was a very practical individual. And and I just said, you know what, I'm open to anything. And it's a lot easier to I think when you kind of own all of that, and you can say, well, yeah, can you believe that the phone didn't work? And in rather than just giving up, or saying, coming up with some conclusion about it, you just kind of go, you know what? I don't care. I'm still going to make it on this call regardless. And then you just kind of push forward or find some other alternative. But I think that resistance is kind of it can be a mixed message. It can just cause you to quit, or it can, cause you to kind of barrel through it and go, you know what? I'm not going to let this stop me.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Jackie, and I think there's something to that when you have the peer support, when you're going through a change process together, you can support one another. Then when you have good guidance, good mentorship, good teaching, you have people who have made many shifts and changes themselves. They have the compassion and the understanding that you're going through a change, and they see it as natural and normal, not something to get reactive about. That makes such a huge difference. And then when you have the consistency of coming back week after week, like I said, the major thing I committed to long ago was just showing up. And that helped carry through a lot of things in the process itself. It's
Yeah.
not like I had to show up perfectly. It's not like everything had to look, because in reality, that just doesn't happen, does it? I mean, I think trying to keep control is a form of resistance, wouldn't you say?
It sure is.
And I
And
have
I
to
think
admit,
that,
go ahead.
it's just kind of, the internet is full of stories about how I changed my life with this or that. And, it just is, that's not going to be necessarily everybody's experience. Or sometimes where we tend to forget the resistance. We tend to forget that, oh, this was a road, or this was quite the mountain that I climbed. And most of the time we just kind of want to when we get some distance from it, we just want to go, yep, I made it to the top. And you forget all of the stuff that happened in between that made it, oh, I think I might have to go back.
I do. I think that's part of the great mythology that it's easy if it's right. Just follow your bliss. It's easy if it's right. I think that's a story that's not true. And if you think about those people who are at the top of the mountain going, yeah, I made it to the top, I just did it. In truth, they did not. I guarantee you they did not. Because if you really interview them, if you get into their process and you walk them back, then all the stories come out about the day when technology didn't work, getting sick, getting upset with people, having their doubts and fears. I guarantee you the bigger the jump they made, the more severe at some point the doubt, frustration, procrastination, overwhelm, worry, anxiety was at some point, because that does show up for everybody. It just does. It's part of the process. And I think that it's so nice to have a place where that's understood and people don't pretend that it's not there, so that, you don't have to feel like there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong. This is part of the process. That was such a huge relief. It was just such a huge relief to no longer feel like something was wrong, but something was right. This is how it actually does work. And I think people who act like if you have the right dream or if you do it right, it's all going to be easy, I think they do everybody else a disservice, honestly, because again, I've interviewed a lot of those people and it's not. It's all in how they tell the story later. And there's definitely that part about the ego, right? That once the ego buys in and it lets go of all the resistance, then it forgets all about that. That never happened. It never existed, which is all well and good. We like that place, right? But then it doesn't remember either. And so the next time we bump up against it, we think this has never happened before. And oh my goodness, what's wrong now? If we don't understand the process, if we don't keep practicing the process itself. Do we still have you, Jackie?
Hmm.
There you are. There you are. Well, let's wrap up. Let's wrap up for today. And what's something we could give people to take away, to maybe play with their own resistance, or to think about with their own resistance, to maybe gentle that a little bit and encourage them to keep stepping into their changes and know that it's not wrong, that it's right. Resistance comes up. What would be something we could give people, you think?
Um,
What's
I
something
think
what's something that's really
just
helped you in the
reflecting
past?
back on anything that you've ever been able to accomplish, it's never been without resistance. Just kind of have to sort of dissect the journey before that, rather than just, I mean, it's great to celebrate your success, but in doing that, sometimes we really are pretending that there was never any resistance in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So maybe when we celebrate the things that looked difficult or hard or tried to slow us down. Maybe part of celebrating is celebrating that um, we got through that time in the process well. That's another thing, that when you're with a peer, you can really celebrate that. You can have a good laugh about that even. And I don't think you can do that quite as much when you're hanging out with people that don't really understand how the change process works and maybe judging or critical.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
people just hear that it's easy. They want to hear, okay, take a pill and have it all be done, or just do this one how-to book and I'll be finished.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I searched for that for years, Jackie. I did. I was always looking for that one way that would finally do it so that then I was done. I haven't found that yet. This seems to work. Okay, very good. Well, we're probably taking off next week, I think, but when we come back, what should we talk about next, do you think?
Hmm. Um, I don't know.
I
I
don't know
haven't thought
either.
about.
Let's kick that one around. We'll kick that one around. We'll think about that for a little bit. So, okay, thank you everybody for joining us this morning. Jackie, thank you for joining me. It's always fun to talk about the Being the Solution tools and the transformation process. Always interesting to talk about that. You have any final words?
Well, celebrate the resistance.
Woohoo! All right, that sounds great. All right, kiddo, take care. Talk to you soon.
Hmm.
Bye,
Bye.
Jackie.